Okay, shalom. Right, very interesting extract from a video that I did a few months ago. This is Midrashic wisdom. It's regarding raising up the bones of Yosef from the Nile. Moshe and Sarach went and accomplished this. But there's two ways that the bones of Yosef was raised up. There was one using Kabbalistic amulets, and then there was one which was merely Moshe asking Yosef to advocate for all the good that he'd done. And really that links in with a very, very powerful concept that comes up always when you are revealing the truth regarding Moshiach Ben Yosef, and that's the concept of Michael. Now, Michael's the advocate, and he stands opposite Satan, who is the accuser. Okay, so we've got to really reach a level of Torah observation and Torah knowledge where we are able to become advocates based on the truth that we understand as revealed in the Torah. So there's a link between the truth being revealed, which is represented by the number 100, but then the next step on from that is 101, and that's the gematria for Michael. So just enjoy this teaching. It's, like I said, it's part of a larger teaching, and I will put that teaching up. If you want to see the contrast between reaching the 100 and the 101, you'll have to go to the actual video, and I'll put on what minutes that you need to look at to enjoy it. But this is brilliant Midrashic teaching, and this is basically the synopsis of what had just been going on as found in the Midrash, and it's absolutely wonderful, and it's needed for today, because we've got to remember that it's very easy to stand as an accuser, but whose work are you doing when you do? Okay, we have got to push ourselves to be advocates, because there's very great reason for that. And also that if we truly understand the name of Yod-Heh-Vav as revealed in the Torah, and the concept of the Mashiach as revealed in the Torah, this truth will lead us to be an advocate. And it's this that will usher in redemption. Okay, so enjoy. This is also highlighted in the Midrash. There's two ways that the bones of Yosef are raised from the Nile, and one leads to devastating consequences, and the one that is very much linked to this. It appears that there's no detrimental consequences as a result. So in Midrash, Moshe meets up with a woman called Segula, who is Sarach Bath Asher, and they go to the Nile, and great difficulty Moshe has great difficulty even finding the bones of Yosef. He's looking around the city, and it's not until Segula goes, and he's weary after three days and 3 nights trying to find him, and can't find him. Segula takes him to the Nile. Yosef's hidden in the water. This is synonymous with Yosef being hidden in the Torah. Moshe was looking for him in the city. He was in the Nile, and he'd been all the top necromancers and magicians and sorcerers of Egypt had put spells to bind that coffin to the bottom of the Nile, because they knew that they were blessed on account of the bones of Yosef. They didn't want the bones to be removed, because they knew if the bones were removed, this would give the children of Israel opportunity to leave, because they had made a promise to Yosef that they wouldn't leave except to take his bones out of Egypt with them. So they had to locate the bones of Yosef. Moshe was despairing because he couldn't. Segula was able to find where the bones of Yosef was buried, in the bottom of the Nile. So there's two ways Moshe raised up the coffin according to Midrash. One, he wrote on a golden plate. I'm speaking by memory now. I possibly will put some slides up for you to have a look at this. One of the ways, he wrote on he wrote out a gold amulet, and he wrote on the words Shah Aleh, ox arise. Yosef's known as an ox. Okay, and then from that, and I think that there was a holy name written on it, possibly the 72-letter name, if I remember from memory. But anyway, I don't know for definite, but I think that is what was written on. But there was definitely written Shah Aleh, or Aleh Shah, or ox arise. So this was a gold amulet, and this is really likened to Kabbalistic amulets, isn't it? In some instances, they will write specific names of God and specific phrases, literally on gold plates. I have got a key that was, it's like an amulet, if you like, and so I do know that this goes on. I've got a golden key made out of gold plate, I think, and it's imprinted and engraved on that certain phrases that's to bring about some kind of prosperity. I never asked for it. I just gave money to a particular charity and they sent me this as a free gift. So I do know that this exists to this day, these Kabbalistic amulets. I don't put... Well, there's obviously some power in what is done with these, or they've got some benefit, but there can also be some negative consequences, because what happened was that particular gold plate that was used to bring up the bones of Yosef was then used by the Erev Rav in the making of the golden calf. So we can see that, okay, so sometimes these things can work for us, but then there can be sometimes very negative consequences as a result of using these Kabbalistic meditations and various, various Kabbalistic amulets. They can come with a devastating consequences, i.e. the golden calf. You can end up getting it that wrong. You can end up getting it that wrong. These in the wrong people's hands can result in, idolatry. Literally idolatry. And when you're talking about Moshiach Ben Yosef, I hope you can appreciate, when we look at the 2,000 years of history and how Moshiach Ben Yosef was descended into Edomite exile, and the resulting idolatry that has come as a consequence of that in the hands of the Edomites, we can see how these things can quickly change from holy to very unholy. It was very holy that what Moshe did to raise up the bones of Yosef, but that same golden plate used turned into the golden calf, that resulted in devastation for the children of Israel. Okay, and all these things are still today. What was is now. Okay, the things that we face then was the things that we face now. We've got to learn from what the sages have written. They gave us some big clues. However, going back to this whole concept of advocacy, there's another version of how those bones were raised in the Midrash. A different section of Midrash states that Moshe and Segula together went down, and Moshe stood on the Nile, and he said to Yosef, "Petition God with all the good that you have done." Okay, so what was he calling Yosef to do? He was calling Yosef to advocate for all the good that he'd done. And the advocacy was able to break the power of the evil that had held him bound in that Egyptian exile. With all the power of the necromancers and the sorcerers and witchcraft and everything that held him at the bottom of the Nile and on his bones unable to be found, it was Moshe reminding him of the power of advocacy. And it said, and after that it just said that in the bones of Yosef arose from the water, which is symbolic of the Torah. This means that when we want to find the bones of Yosef, we don't look in the city of Rome. Moshe was looking in the city. Can't be found. You got to go into the Torah to find Moshiach Ben Yosef, because he's there. Very, very, very clearly revealed if you take the time to look in the right place. Moshe was not looking in the right place. Once you see him, once you find the bones where he's hidden in the Torah, once you find the bones and get the bones out that's hidden in the Torah, then you got the bones out of the Torah, and you can leave the exile behind. So we've got a lot to learn from these midrashic teachings, because they were the signpost for us to get out of this redemption that we face now. That was the children of Israel stuck in Egyptian exile. We are now in Edomite exile. Okay, those same Erev Rav that took the golden plate and made the golden calf and seduced the children of Israel into idol worship, those are still dominant forces in Judaism today. Okay, so we can learn The power of advocacy, when we arouse that power within us, we literally can draw out the bones of Yosef from all the forces of evil that held him bind in a place of exile. We can redeem the bones of Yosef, and in doing so, get ourselves out of this exile. So that's why I'm going over this again. And obviously that's connected to the very first word in Torah. Okay, the very first word in Torah. And I suggest you go listen to this teaching that I did called, it mentions about 100 and 101. How much more is 101 than 100? Go listen to that teaching. It's the last teaching that I did before this, because it's so important. That's why I'm going over it again, and that's why I've linked it up to the Midrash. We've got so much wisdom that we've inherited. But unfortunately, the wisdom that we've inherited has been corrupted by the exilic mindset that we've also inherited. We have inherited lies that prevent us from seeing things clearly and truthfully, in ways that reveal the name Yod He Vav He. So we can think about Yeshua. He's trapped in the city of Rome. Probably the same forces of evil and concealment holding him bound. Why? Why would Yod He Vav He allow us to do this? Because he wants us to use every power of discernment in order to get, to reveal the Moshiach Ben Yosef. You know, just as Moshe used everything to bring up the bones of Yosef from the Nile so that they could get out of exile. We've got to do this exactly the same now. Moshiach Ben Yosef is trapped by powerful other forces, demonic forces, dark forces, and it's very difficult to remove the essence of Moshiach Ben Yosef from amongst all that darkness. Those dark forces are very overwhelming, so we've just got to use the wisdom that that has been left for us with these signposts that have been left in the Midrash and all the other teachings that we're talking about. And obviously we've got to do some decoding, and through the numbers it can reveal a lot to us if we accurately interpreting them. And the accuracy with which we interpret them is very much linked to the true understanding of the concept of Moshiach. Okay, the more true of an understanding we have of the concept of Moshiach, the Moshiach of Yod He Vav He, the clearer things become, because through the concept of Moshiach we see the name of Yod He Vav He. So it becomes like the more clearer we are regarding the concept of Mashiach, the more clearer the lens appears, that gives us a clear view of the name Yod He Vav He. Well, it's like the name Yod He Vav He becomes the very lens through which we are able to assess the entire of reality. And we're seeing things in a very clear and true way, because Yod He Vav He is the truth. So the greater the more we can access that, the more we can look through the name Yod He Vav He clearly, without obstruction, without lies, without concealment, the better it is. So we've got to remove the concealments, the doubts, the fears, the lies, and all these things. We've got to really work hard to accomplish that. Right, so I'm glad I've gone over that again, but that's a bit of I'd never expected to. So let's go back now.